You know what I watched last night? A
What?
movie with, it's called A Few Good Men.
Oh, I saw that movie. That's a good movie. That's an old movie, yeah.
Yeah, it was from 93,
Yeah, yeah,
92.
good old few good men, yeah. I was also watching yesterday the James Cagney film where he played Admiral Halsey.
Really?
Yeah, he played Admiral Halsey, you know, the great admiral during the Pacific. James Cagney played the part. He played a good part too. That's when they defeated the Japanese in the Solomon Islands, you know, and that was the turning point of the war.
Was he designated to any particular ship, or was he like just for all
Yeah,
the,
he was
the
he
whole
was
fleet?
the he was the head admiral of the Pacific Fleet.
Oh, the whole fleet.
Yeah, he was a four-star admiral,
Wow.
Admiral Bill Halsey,
I always thought that was
and
a British guy.
he defeated the Japanese in the Solomon Island battle, and that's when the Japanese knew that they were going to get hit pretty bad because once he defeated their navy, then they took over all the islands in the Pacific there.
Oh.
And one of the biggest one there was what do you call it? It was called a big island. I forget the name of it. But once they took that island, then the Japanese were defeated. They had to give up all them islands there.
My dad
And
was
the Solomon Islands.
My
It was a
dad,
good movie. You know, it's supposed to be a true story too.
yeah.
And he played the part of Bill Halsey. He was a four-star admiral.
Is that like just under a general?
Yeah. Admirals. Yeah, I would say a four-star admiral is like a four-star general. Yeah, that's the highest rank you could get,
Oh.
unless you're head of the Naval Academy. You know, the Naval. But that's the highest thing you could get, 4 stars.
Do you remember?
And the same with the generals in the Army or Marine. 4-star is the highest you could go. The only guy that ever went higher was Eisenhower during the war. He got a 5-star because he was in charge of everybody, even the English soldiers and all, you know, when they had the invasion. And I saw it the other day on television on the part of the invasion where my outfit landed. But we didn't land on Omaha. We landed on Utah. And Utah had nothing but paratroopers and gliders. Because I remember when we landed there on D6, 6 days after D-Day, all we saw was parachutes and gliders that had landed during the night. And according to the report there, 18,000 paratroopers were dropped. And 68 gliders were dropped with paratroopers in them. And when we landed there, that's all we saw. In fact, I sent 2 parachutes home to my mom. But in them days, they didn't have camouflage parachutes. They were all white.
Oh, really?
All white. And I sent 2 of them home to my mom.
So you were in the Navy?
No, Army.
Army.
Navy. No, what the hell was I doing in the Navy? No.
So you came in a...
So when we landed on Utah, on D6, and the Germans were still... And I landed with an evacuation hospital.
Oh, jeez, that must
I was a medic.
Really?
Yeah,
No
I was a
kidding.
medic. I was in the medics. And we landed there, and the first thing we had to do was lay out a 100 by 100 foot Red Cross to show the Germans that it's a hospital we're putting in there.
Oh.
And it was the 128th Evacuation Hospital. And we had field hospitals that would pick up the wounded and bring them to us. And then from us, if they were still alive, we would send them to ships in the water there, in the channel there, so they could take better care of them.
Kidding, like MASH,
But
like the MASH unit.
we lasted, I said, my God, I was in his service for 35 months, 1 month short of 3 years. But we didn't stay in the States long. We were in the States 4 months, and they shipped us to England. And I went on the original Queen Elizabeth, when they sent us to Scotland.
What year was that?
1943, the end of 43. Then the invasion came in June of 44. So we were in England for about 8-9 months before the invasion.
Boy, you must have been.
But the fucking Germans, they were tough fucking cookies, them son of a bitches.
Yeah.
But at least they gave up. Over in the Pacific, the fucking Japs would never give up. They would either shoot themselves or fight till the end.
Oh my God.
And over there, that was strictly a Marine battle.
Do you think the Japs were intending to take us over before?
Oh, they were looking to take over the whole Pacific area, and they had most of it.
Wow.
They had most of it. They had the Philippines. They had all the islands. My God, they had the Philippines. They had most of the islands in the Pacific there. The Japanese were strong. For a nation of something like 110 million people, they had a tough army and a tough navy. It's just that we were a little tougher later on, and we defeated them. Otherwise, they were looking to take over the whole Pacific area.
You think they were in cahoots with Germany in a way?
In a way, but not much.
Really?
Not much.
What do
Because
you
they were
think-
so far apart, Jim.
You think
The
Germany?
Japanese were here, the Germans were here.
You think the
But I tell you,
Germans?
the Germans, if that stupid bastard never tried to attack Russia,
Yeah.
and Russia had nothing, we were supplying Russia with everything. They had nothing.
Really?
But what killed the fucking German army was the winter.
Oh.
The winter killed them. They just couldn't take it no more.
They spread out too far.
Oh, he hated Russia. He hated Russia because Russia was communist, you know. And he hated Russia, and he almost had them over. He was at the gates of Moscow, for Christ's sake, but the winter killed him. His soldiers couldn't do it no more. They were freezing in a fucking cold winter. And the Russians were used to it. And with the help of America, with all the tanks and planes and all, they started to push the Germans back. When the war ended in Europe, my outfit was about 110 miles away from Pilsen, Czechoslovakia, when the war ended.
Yeah, Germany.
Yeah, it was a little past Germany.
Oh.
The Russians were coming here and the Americans were going there, and then they met at the Albi River. And that's when they started to shake hands and all that bullshit, and the Germans gave up. And every one of them took a fucking pill and killed themselves.
Yeah.
The German big shots, even
Son.
Hitler himself.
Cyanide.
He
Yeah.
took a pill.
Right.
But
Wow.
that was a terrible thing. But that was,
Well, England
Jim,
was getting
that
England.
was 75 years ago.
England was getting abused so
Oh,
bad.
they were getting beat bad with the bombers, but then you got to give them credit.
They
They
never gave
held
up.
on. They held
never-
on.
They took a lot of abuse.
We were in England. I was in England for about 8-9 months before the invasion took over.
Really?
That's where we landed. Actually, the ship landed in Scotland, and they shipped us by train down to a place called the little town there.
Scotland's near.
Little town in England. We were stationed there, the whole outfit, until we were ready for the invasion. And I went to London for 2 days. But London was hit pretty bad with them German bombers and them buzz bombs. The Germans were sending them buzz bombs over.
Was Germany feeling any threats from England? Is that why they did it, or they just figured?
Oh, you know, Jim, I wasn't in the infantry, which I'm glad of that.
Oh.
But as an evacuation hospital, you saw all the wounded. You saw all the dead. You saw all the guys losing an arm and a leg.
Especially Omaha Beach, right?
You know, it was a terrible, but it was a great experience. I spent a lot of time there. Got discharged 4 days before Christmas in 1945.
4 days, huh?
Yeah, 4 days before Christmas we got home. We left France. Took us 19 days to get home. We were on them fucking Liberty ships. But I have no regrets, Jim.
Was that like a merchant?
I'm just glad I got come out of it alive, and
When you say Liberty ship, is that like the Merchant Marines?
yeah,
Transport?
it was more of that. I got some nice what do you call it? Did you ever see my thing in the bedroom? My picture and the medals I got. Go in the spare room, you'll see. Yeah, go in the television room, Jim, and see the things I got.
Wow, you look like a young kid.
I was only 20 years old.
20 years old.
20 going on 21.
How did you learn the medical stuff?
What?
How did you learn the medical field?
That's where they put us, Jim. I didn't volunteer for it.
What they taught you there?
We went to Camp Upton for 4 days. Then they shipped us to Camp Ellis, Illinois. We were stationed in Illinois, about 70 miles south of Chicago, and that's where you had what do you call it? You had medics, the guys with the wireless things there, and what do you call it?
Things will never be the same again, Ash.
Merchant Marines in the same camp.
That's where.
And
That's
when
where
they shipped us over, we knew we weren't going to the Pacific, because when we were on the train, we could see cars going toward east. So we knew we weren't going to the Pacific. We were going to Europe. And we were a place called Camp Shanks, Illinois, Camp Shanks, New York, for 3 days. They put us on the original Queen Elizabeth. They put us on the original Queen Elizabeth, and it took us 6 days to get to Scotland. 6 days, that's how fast that fucking ship was. That was the original. They built the second Queen Elizabeth. The first one they destroyed after the war. And it took us 6 days to get to Scotland. And then from Scotland, they took us by train to England. And we were in England till the invasion.
But I mean, where'd you get your training for medic?
Camp Ellis, right there.
Oh, didn't take long, huh?
No, maybe we got there in November 13th of 43. And we were shipped over to England in April. About 5 months we were in Camp Ellis.
So you're like the fugitive guy.
But I have no regrets. I'm just thankful that we came home.
Dr. Kimball.
Yeah.
That's where he got his experience. Would
I'm
you
just
still know
thankful
how to?
we got home. A lot of guys never made it.
Would you still know how to treat people as far as medical?
Yeah, but like I say, we were pretty safe. Pretty safe, you know, as far as that goes.
Yeah.
The only thing is when we landed on Utah for about 2 days, them fucking Germans were dropping them fucking, what they call bouncing Bettys.
Wow.
And they were sent down by parachute. And when they'd hit the ground, they'd spread out.
Ooh.
And maybe they'd have about 8 or 9 bombs on them, and they would explode.
Like shrapnel.
They called them bouncing Bettys. The Germans would drop.
Shrapnel and everything.
But we had to dig little foxholes, you know, dig, not deep, but just deep enough to stay underground.
You wouldn't get hit with that stuff.
But other than that, after that a couple of days on Utah, it was pretty quiet, because the Americans were starting to finally break through, especially in Omaha. Omaha was where they got hit bad.
Oh yeah, they took a lot of.
In Utah, where we landed, we had to go down the ship by rope and go into the little landing crafts, and the only thing is we had to wade in about 100 feet of water to get onto the land, and then to get up on the cliffs.
Oh boy,
they would send us up by rope ladders.
Yeah, because those rocks are slippery, right?
No, it wasn't rocks. It was all. It wasn't.
Dirt.
I'd say the wall was around the height of the cliffs was around maybe 100 feet, and they had rope ladders. You had to climb up there. Then once we got on top, all you saw was gliders and parachutes.
Oh my God.
And
But they didn't expect it, right? It was a surprise.
well, the Germans didn't expect it. They didn't think we would drop 18,000 paratroopers. The paratroopers really dropped, during the night.
Yeah.
They would drop during the night.
Jeez, what a freaking
But,
scary few years, I bet.
But they just were, when you think of that thing and you say to yourself, how many poor bastards never made it back? How many poor bastards came with either a arm missing or a leg missing or something missing, something. You say to yourself, thank God that I got out of it alive, because the Germans were still bombing. The only thing is that protected us, I think, was that big Red Cross.
And they honored that, huh?
They honored that. Of course, we had some German wounded too in the hospital.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I watched the story about Hitler, I just can't fathom the way this
Well,
guy had no...
he was trying to take over all of Europe, and I'll tell you, he had most of it.
But I
He
mean,
had most of it.
He had no...
The French died like fucking rackers. They had nothing, them phony bastards. All the other countries, the only place that he didn't take, that he didn't have, was Belgium. But otherwise, going in from Belgium into Germany, because Germany and Belgium border one another. And when the breakthrough came, that the Germans were trying to the breakthrough, they took us out of a place called Eupen, Germany, and they shipped us back to Liège, Belgium, because the Germans were trying to break through. And because we had 10 days of like snow and all that, the Germans were coming in. But then when the sun came out after 10 days and the planes were allowed to go, they bombed the shit out of the Germans and they knocked them back, and that's when they probably gave up. Because the Germans were trying to break through. They wanted to go to Antwerp to stop that was the biggest port in Belgium. And all the supplies coming in from Americans were coming in through Antwerp in Belgium. And they were trying to take that. And there was movies. There was a couple of movies made about that whole thing, where the Germans trying to break through. And there was a couple of good movies made on that. So, but other than that, Jim, that was my experience in the service.
Must have been a scary few years.
I was in there 35 months, 1 month short of 3 years.
Guys,
But I was only in the States about 4.5 months, and was shipped right over to Europe, because they were getting ready for that invasion. Took time, but they got there. All right, Jim, be good. You heard my whole story.
Yeah, maybe next time when my cousin comes, we'll sit down and
Okay, Jim.
we'll have a brandy.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you. Take care.